We've already broken down the big free agent moves that have taken place just at the start of the free agent period. There's plenty more that we haven't covered, so let's get to some of those under the radar moves. These are some players that actually might be undervalued heading into the 2025 fantasy season. You need to know about them. Let's start off in Houston. You know they needed help at receiver with Tank Dell unlikely to play at all, if any, this season, and then Stephon Diggs, who knows? So they needed some help, and they got it from a kind of surprising source. Christian Kirk in the Jacksonville fire sale got shipped over there. Chris, is this what you expected, and is this good for both sides?
It is definitely not what I expected, but I think this is good. It's at least good for Christian Kirk. I don't know if it's probably good for both sides. I mean, they didn't pay a big price for him, but this has got to be great for Christian Kirk. I mean, he's going to fill that slot role that we saw Stephon Diggs have last year, assuming they don't do something crazy and bring back Stephon Diggs, which I absolutely doubt. So this is great for Christian Kirk. We know Brian Thomas was the alpha in Jacksonville. Christian Kirk, was kind of not really involved too heavily before his injury last year. So let's go to Houston. You got CJ Stroud. Let's get a new start there. I think this has to be good for Christian Kirk.
It's interesting. Kirk is one of those players, you feel like when he signed that big deal to go to the Jags in the first place, got a little too much hype, right? Expectations were high, understandably, with Trevor Lawrence. And then after last year, disappointment, he's missed some time because of injury. Now all of a sudden people just forget about him. Like, that's it. He's washed. He's done. It's like one extreme to the other. He's going to fall somewhere in the middle. I still think he's a good, productive receiver. I like this situation better than Jacksonville because I still believe CJ Stroud is a better quarterback than Trevor Lawrence. It'll be interesting to see how he's used because, they're going to have a new OC as well with Bobby Slowick gone. But look, the target share is going to be there. Nico is still the alpha, but no Dell, probably no Diggs, and even so, he's not going to be even close to healthy. I think this has got to be a win for Kirk, and I don't feel like the market is going to overreact for fantasy. And, throw that on top of Kirk, they also got Braxton Berrios, who had been with the Dolphins, which is odd to me because he's kind of a little slot receiver. I'm not sure what he's going to do sitting behind Christian Kirk. I mean, do you think Berrios benefits in any way here?
I mean, he benefits in the sense that there's at least a path. If Kirk isn't healthy, which we've seen the last couple of years he hasn't been, or he's not productive, it gives Berrios a path here. But, I mean, that's really it. It's a clearer path than he probably had in Miami, but that's really it.
Now, not every free agent move was a player going to a new team. Some of the big important signings were guys just staying where they are. And one of those is Hollywood Brown back with the Chiefs, another one-year deal. A lot of people are going to say, oh, well, whatever. He didn't do anything last year. Yeah, I mean, he was hurt. That's understandable. But look, Xavier Worthy came on late in the year. Rashee Rice will be back. You know what? Maybe Hollywood Brown is a guy who kind of gets overlooked on draft day. Is that a mistake?
I think it is a mistake. I mean, this is a guy now going outside the top 100 picks, and I understand why, right? The last 2 years have pretty much been lost years for Hollywood Brown for fantasy, but this is a guy who had he had a productive year his last year in Baltimore and was off to a great start his first year in Arizona before injury. And I get it. You can say this guy's always hurt, and he is always hurt the last few years. But, I mean, come on. It's a Kansas City Chiefs offense. He signed another one-year prove-it deal. If he can stay healthy, he's at least worth a pick outside the top 100, if not more.
Yeah, I had really high hopes for him last year. I think you did too. Let's see what happens. I mean, obviously, you're not investing an early pick to get him. I feel like he might be a better value pick. Well, I mean, I know he'll be a better value in terms of where he gets drafted than Worthy or Rice. But look, this is going to be still an offense that spreads the ball around. There will not be one guy, who's going to get the majority of the targets, especially Travis Kelce is still back. So, no, he's not going to be a breakout type of player. No, he's not going to put up huge numbers, but you can get him probably so late. And a lot of people are just kind of going to be disinterested because he's had all those injuries. Yeah, take a guy who has that weekly upside because you don't need him to put up huge season-long stats. You just need a couple of big games out of him, and I think you can get that. Now, running back Aaron Jones, staying with the Vikings. This seems like actually a pretty good landing spot for him to stay at.
It's got to be a great spot. I did not think they would bring Aaron Jones back, but they did. And not only that, with like a 2-year deal, right? So it shows their commitment to him. He was good last year. Yeah, he's getting up there in age, but he still doesn't show many signs of slowing down. No, the days of Aaron Jones being an RB1, a top 5 running back are, in the past, but you're not drafting him that way. He's still an upside weekly RB2 in fantasy. in what will probably still be a good offense. He's still a good pass catcher. This is great for Aaron Jones, and I feel like nobody's even talking about it. I think Aaron Jones, once again, is going to be a great value pick in fantasy drafts.
Agree. Aaron Jones has still been just as effective. This is a good offense, and as we discussed in our big free agent signing video, JJ McCarthy as opposed to Sam Darnold, I don't think that's a downgrade. I don't think it's going to be. And this offense will still hum, and Aaron Jones is going to be the guy because Cam Akers is a free agent. They really don't have any competition for him. They'll bring in somebody. It's not going to matter. Aaron Jones is going to be as close to a workhorse as you can get. So this seems like a big win for him. Not a lot of big names at tight end this year, but I guess one of the most fantasy relevant guys that could have moved on was Mike Gesicki. Put up some nice games with Cincinnati, and he could do it again because he's back with the Bengals. But with T. Higgins staying there, how is this a win for him?
I mean, even last year we saw down the stretch, he still had some nice games, even with T. Higgins. Yes, he's a tight end that's not named like Brock Bowers, so he's going to be volatile, but he's got the weekly upside in this offense. T. Higgins is going to be there, whether it's franchise tag or on an extension. It's going to be basically the same offense they had last year. Gesicki has that weekly upside at tight end, and look, they signed him. They actually extended him, which for the Bengals, that's pretty rare. So that shows confidence they have in him. Joe Burrow wanted them back. Yeah, I don't think Mike Gesicki is going to be a top 5 tight end this year or anything, but I think he's going to be, once again, like he was last year, a guy you can grab off the waiver wire and help you out multiple times throughout the year.
Yeah, it's funny because Bengals fans probably aren't too thrilled. Not anything against Gesicki himself, but it's like, okay, we can't give out a big contract to T. Higgins yet, and we haven't paid Jamar Chase yet, but we can definitely extend Mike Gesicki, not those defensive players or anybody else. But look, is there an offense that could be potentially a better spot for a tight end or receiver or anybody than one that has Joe Burrow, one that was one of the most pass happy last year, one that put up more points than the Bengals? There is none really, realistically, that needs a tight end. So this is the best case scenario for Gesicki. He's not necessarily going to be one of the top fantasy tight ends just because Chase and Higgins are still there, but still, he was fantasy viable, and now he still is. Now, some players that switch teams that maybe you didn't realize this could be impactful at running back. Elijah Mitchell, you remember him? Guy who's had a hard time staying healthy in his career. Could he do some damage now that he is a Chief?
This has got to be great for Elijah Mitchell, and I have not heard anybody even really talking about Elijah Mitchell. I mean, yes, Isaiah Pacheco will probably enter next year as a starter. I really doubt they're going to bring Kareem Hunt back. I don't think they're going to bring Samaje Perine back. So Elijah Mitchell, at worst, is going to be one of the highest end handcuffs in all of fantasy football. And we've seen what this guy can do when he's healthy. Now, I know we're going to get those comments because we always get those comments. Yeah, this dude can't stay healthy. I get it. You might only get 3 or 4 games of a healthy Elijah Mitchell. But if you do get 3 or 4 games of a healthy Elijah Mitchell as a starting running back for the Chiefs, he could legit give you 3 or 4 top 5 fantasy weeks at the running back position. So I think this is great for Elijah Mitchell, a guy who wasn't even being thought of in fantasy drafts. I now think has to be one of the highest end handcuffs in all of fantasy.
Yeah, like with a team like the Chiefs, who is always a contender, if they're showing interest in actually getting a guy like him, it's for a reason. Number one, I think this should definitely put some doubt as to far as how they believe Isaiah Pacheco is going to contribute. You could say maybe he just wasn't back to full health last year. He played a lot of games down the stretch. It wasn't just like he came back, they rushed him back. No, he just did not look like the same player. So this tells me they're going to give Mitchell a legit shot to compete for touches. It's still going to be somewhat of a committee, I'm sure. But again, how many better landing spots could there be? So this is definitely something to take note of. And this is a guy you can grab probably unnoticed at the end of your draft because, like you said, not a lot of people even realize that this took place. Another under the radar move, Dyami Brown, who really came on late season in playoffs for Washington, no longer in Washington. Well, you would think moving away from Jaden Daniels, not a good thing, but you like this landing spot.
Yeah, going to Jacksonville. I know it's Trevor Lawrence, not Jaden Daniels, but look, what's happened so far in Jacksonville? Christian Kirk is gone. Evan Ingram is gone. I mean, Gabe Davis, whatever. Like, it's basically Brian Thomas Jr., and that's it, right? That's all. I mean, Parker Washington. Like, who are the other real pass catchers here? Dyami Brown did show signs last year. They've been looking for this guy, right? They tried it with Calvin Ridley. They tried it with Gabe Davis, looking for that outside guy who can, make those contested catches, make those big plays. We saw Dyami Brown start to do it at the end of last season. Maybe it started to click for him. Now going to this new offense where he should have a chance right from day one to be the number 2 target in this offense. I think this has got to be great for him. I mean, yeah, it's risky. There's no guarantee here. But again, this is a guy you're going to be taking with one of your last picks, or, maybe he's going to be one of those guys you're going to be talking about on a waiver wire video one week. But I think this is definitely good for Dyami Brown. I mean, Commanders probably would have been better, but if it's not the Commanders, this might be next best.
Right, and that's the thing. You got to realize, sure, he's clearly going to a worse team. Like, that's not even debatable. But the opportunity for him personally is going to be better. The target share has got to be bigger, right? And for whatever you think of Trevor Lawrence or Jacksonville itself, they're going to still pass the ball quite a bit. And they got a new coach. And you got to pay attention when, kind of a new administration, including head coach, GM, whatever it is, they clean house, as Jags have done, right? And they bring in certain guys. They targeted him for a reason. They have plans to use him. This isn't just depth. And so he's clearly going to be far behind Brian Thomas. And look, maybe they do draft another receiver. We'll see what happens there. But Dyami Brown is going to get a chance to finally contribute consistently, which I don't feel like he really had that chance ever until the very end of last season in Washington. Everybody loves a receiver in Buffalo. Do you love Josh Palmer in Buffalo?
What's not to like here? I mean, Josh Palmer, I feel like, is a solid wide receiver. He's been solid in fantasy when the opportunity is there. And the opportunity is there in Buffalo. I mean, Amari Cooper was not the solution. Curtis Samuel, Khalil Shakir, he's going to be whatever he is. Maybe Keon Coleman makes a year 2 leap, but Josh Palmer is solid. Now, of course, it's Buffalo. We know Josh Allen's going to spread the ball. He's not going to be a guy that's going to be a week in, week out, contributor to your fantasy team, but he's going to be one of those guys where when you need a bye week fill in, you need a flex with upside. I think he's going to have it. And look, there's a path if Keon Coleman does not develop in year 2 that he is the number 2 wide receiver alongside Khalil Shakir in this offense.
Yep, this is going to be one of those moves that a lot of people either don't even know about or they just ignore, right? What has Josh Palmer ever done for me? He can definitely do more with Josh Allen in Buffalo. Now, again, as you said, they're going to spread the ball around, but even if Shakir is probably the main target there again, and they'll throw it to the tight ends and the running backs and spread it around, Josh Palmer might be able to pretty much earn the de facto wide receiver 2 role because I just don't think they have a whole lot. Like you said, Keon Coleman, not sold on him, and I don't think he showed anything last season, even late in his rookie year, to convince me otherwise. So Josh Palmer might wind up being the number 2 receiver in Buffalo next year, and that's got to be interesting for fantasy. And then also in the AFC East, the Dolphins finally add a somewhat consistent receiver, although is Nick Westbrook-Ikhine somebody who you feel can be a regular contributor in that offense?
Well, he was consistent last year in scoring touchdowns. I mean, he wasn't consistent in racking up yards or receptions, but man, he was consistent in scoring touchdowns. I don't know if he can do that in this Miami offense, but again, kind of like what I talked about with Braxton Berrios in Houston, Tyreek Hill getting up there in age, was a little banged up last year. Jalen Waddle always seems to be banged up. At least now there's a path for Nick Westbrook-Ikhine if Tyreek Hill misses time or Jalen Waddle misses time. Now he's in this Miami offense, which you got to feel better about than the Tennessee offense. So, look, I don't know if Nick Westbrook-Ikhine is going to have an impact from week 1, but he's definitely a guy that you need to know about, that he's on the Dolphins now. And again, I could see him being a guy where, like, Jalen Waddle gets hurt in week 3 or week 4, Tyreek Hill gets hurt in week 3 or week 4. He's the top waiver wire ad in all of fantasy.
Exactly. And whoever winds up being the wide receiver 2, 3, whatever in Tennessee, I'd rather have the number 3 receiver in a good offense like Miami than the number 2 receiver in a bad offense like Tennessee. I mean, he was still able to put up numbers with Will Levis / Mason Rudolph. I'm pretty sure he can do better with Tua Tagovailoa. Yeah, Tyreek Hill will be back. Jalen Waddle's still there, but you've got to wonder what the long term holds for those guys if this season kind of crashes and burns for Miami. But they locked up Westbrook-Ikhine. He's going to be a part of this offense, and so I don't think you can sleep on him. Now, for some reason you didn't catch our first free agent video, we broke down all the big name signings you definitely want to see that one.